It still says 8:59. What you got? 9. Good morning. It is 9 a.m. Welcome to the July 5th, 2017 City Council meeting. Let the record reflect that all city officials and council members are present. Please excuse my scratchy voice this morning. We will stand and please a moment of silence for a friend of the city of Punta Gorda that we recently lost, Ray Rose. The seat is open for Ray. We wish he was here this morning and keep him in his family in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Blessed are you, Lord of creation. You feed the whole world with your goodness, your grace, your kindness, and your mercy. You nourish us with these attributes which we inspire to ourselves. May this council and all here present accept your guidance and counsel in all matters coming before this assembly today. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, first we have a 25-year service award presentation.
We do. 25 years, when you look at him, it's hard to believe that he was here 25 years. But I hope we go quick because the people at Captain Bill's are grumbling because Teresa Briggs is not there at the moment. So anyway, Johnny Briggs, 25 years, battalion chief in our fire department. Come on up.
What an honor. Ray Briggs, Fire Chief, for the record. So like many of our fire department employees, Johnny started with us as a volunteer. As a young firefighter EMT, Johnny participated in our firematics and competition team, as well as the department dive team. He quickly moved up the ranks to lieutenant and ultimately battalion chief. Johnny was one of the first paramedics for the city and helped with establishing some of the original protocols and standard operational guidelines that are still in use today. Johnny's characterized by his coworkers as a great communicator and problem solver. His mechanical aptitude has proven to be extremely beneficial both in the field as well as during routine repairs and maintenance of equipment and apparatus. The fire department's in-service fire inspection program was developed and maintained by Johnny several years ago. Now, I've pointed out just a few of the positive qualities that Johnny has, and there's truly many more. But I have to say that I know a side of Johnny that not many in this room know. Okay? Yeah. A mischievous side that only a younger brother would know, like the time he chose to wrap a piece of dog food in a candy wrapper and convinced me it was a new kind of candy. Didn't taste like candy at all, just for the record. Yeah, I probably did eat it. Johnny, it's an absolute honor and privilege to present you this 25-year service award. Congratulations.
I need to come in again, Teresa.
All right.
Speech.
All right.
Thank you. Like everybody says, it has gone fast. It really has. I don't know where the years have gone. But I want to thank the City Council for this nice award. Thank you for letting me work for the city all these years and what I consider the greatest job on the planet. And I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here a few more. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a certificate of completion for Councilmember Cummings. He spent some time in Daytona Beach, but he wasn't on the beach. He was at the Advanced Institute for Municipal Officials. Congratulations. Okay, next, if your name is in the running for a board or committee position and you would like to introduce yourself, now would be the time. Please take the podium on this side, please. Any board or committee member nominees want to introduce themselves? Anybody here? I see somebody approaching.
Morning, my name's Jake Dye. I'm a citizen of Punta Gorda. I've applied to be for the position for the Punta Gorda Canal Advisory Committee. So, got to remember what that is. I'm a boater. Been a boater for a long time, both power and sail. I was an original member of the Boaters Alliance, the Team Punta Gorda Marine Committee. I'm currently a member of the Charlotte County Marine Advisory Committee, and I've got about 4 years of experience in marine construction in our canal system. I think I can take my experience and my interest in boating and our, in our environment and make a contribution. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any board or committee member nominee want to introduce themselves? Okay, seeing none, we will recess as the City Council and shortly reconvene as the Community Redevelopment Agency. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
How do you do? I want to put a disclaimer in all my time.
Okay. Okay. Call the CRA meeting to order. All the commissioners are present. The first item of business would be citizens' comments on CRA agenda items only, which would be approval of the minutes for June 7th, the project status report for July 2017, invoice from iCard Merrill, and approval of the master solar lease agreement for FPL. If you would like to speak on any one of those matters, now would be the time. Please take your place at this podium. You will have 3 minutes. Anybody like to speak on CRA agenda items? Anybody? Okay, seeing none, we will move into the minutes.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of June 7th. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next, we will move into the CRA project status report.
Howard Koenig, CRA Director. This is our monthly report. We have a lot of new faces for our regular council meetings, so you'll be able to see what's going on in the downtown neighborhood area. The marina still is quite well booked, and we have 15 liveaboards and 12 reservations for July already in the community room. And this is the pump-out vessel activity for those of you who have ever used the pump-out vessel out there in the harbor. We go not only around Punta Gorda, but throughout Charlotte Harbor. And this is the activity for June of 2017, pump-outs and Florida versus non-Florida vessels. The affordable housing units on East Virginia and MLK, they're almost done. They may be done by July 7th, we'll see. But those will be ready, and I'm sure there's a waiting list ready to move in there. Very nicely done. The East Side Garden Fresh Market, this is not a community garden, this is actually a business venture, which is a couple of properties down from the affordable housing. We rebid it, taking out all the federal requirements. The bid still came in over budget. So we're regrouping. We're going to use some city forces along with some volunteers and bring that project back in line. Seems like every one of our bids is coming in more than. The playground. The Citizens Committee and the staff and the vendor have gotten together and finalized the plans. That's later on in the council agenda. So once it's approved today, we hope to get started on the new Gilchrist Park playground For those of you who have been by there, there's not much there anymore, but it's really going to look good. It's about a $500,000 project. And if you've been by Gilchrist Park, either biking or walking, or you can't drive there right now, the pavilions are up. If you go by Retta, you can see a lot of the brick pavers put in for the diagonal parking. It's really taking shape now. You can see how the new parking is going to be arranged. The bases for the decorative lights are in the ground. And the crosswalks are now getting done on Gill, Durrance, and Harvey. So once the Retta work is complete, that road can reopen, and then the rest of the park can finish up. So the seawall is done, and they'll be starting the formation of the Harbor Walk soon. The library site, well, you know, we almost had it done. We didn't, so the rains came. And it's okay, because the county's not ready to start construction for a while. So we've settled on the interlocal agreement with the county, and we're going to split the costs for the enhanced design. The Friends of the Library are putting in $50,000. The design team is reconvened so they can finish the design, and eventually we'll get in there, complete the remediation, the site remediation, and the city work will be done at that time.
And the Friends of the Library are giving an additional $150,000 for interior improvements as well. Total of $200,000.
That's great. Huge.
Harold Court Center, the foot landing has closed. They're still going to do a running events, but they've closed. So actually, they've started sending us some dollars for past due rent. And the Dream Salon and Spa build-out continues. They've had to change contractors, and their first contractor they had to let go. They're a dispute. So well, they're still working on it. So. And that's the CRA report.
Questions for Howard? No? Okay, next we have the invoice of iCard Merrill. Any questions or motions?
No, move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the invoice. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, next we have approval of the amendment to the master solar lease agreement with FPL.
We do have a representative from FPL here. We haven't seen her in years. Her name is Ray Dowling. Charlotte Miller actually is our rep now. But the amendment is to approve the solar canopies for the Lashley Park area because it's CRA property. Now, FP&L is also doing canopies at Hector House Plaza and Bailey Brothers Park over the seating areas. And they have a nice addition right here, City Hall parking area. FP&L is going to do a solar canopy over some of the parking spaces for shade. And they're going to pay for it and put it up and maintain it.
Great.
Yeah.
Any questions for Howard on that?
No.
Do we need to
Delighted
have a
that it's
motion on that?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the master solar lease agreement. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Citizens' comments on CRA. Anybody like to speak on the Community Redevelopment Agency? Take this podium right here to the right. You have 3 minutes. State your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name's Debbie Coudray. I was just wondering if they're going to build the play area around the tree, or if they're going to take that tree down.
This is a comment period. It's not a question and answer, but we
comment.
do have the playground on our agenda later
Gotcha.
in the agenda, so you'll
Okay,
see the whole
thanks anyway.
conceptual design. Yep. Anybody else like to speak? Citizens' comments.
I was just wondering, the parking at Gilchrist there, it seems like there should be a road in front of the parking so people don't have to back up. We have a lot of seniors in our community, and it seems like you should be able to pull through and have a road in front of those parking lots there. But that's my comment anyway.
I mean the diagonal parking. Well, we knew when we did this it was going to be a culture shock, because you will not be able to park in the park anymore. It's the curbing and the sidewalk. You can only park on Retta. So we're preserving the grass area now for the future. And it is going to take some time getting used to, but it is really nicely laid out. If you go by there when you get a chance, you can see the parking space is really nicely laid out.
Have we discussed the speed limit on that road? We talked about it, but I don't know that we've really considered anything until everything's open again.
I don't remember any discussion about that. I know we've talked about traffic calming measures, and the crosswalks themselves will act as like that, so.
It was a wait and see.
It was a wait and see, yeah. So when everything gets back open, it's possible that we'll look at it again. Commissioner comments, Gary?
None at this time.
No, not today.
Nothing.
All I can say is the fireworks were great last
They
night.
were.
Yes, they
Yes.
were.
Great.
They were great. No, nothing else.
Nothing else.
Nope, okay, seeing no more comments, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm gonna get home till 11:15 with the boat. I was like, he gets stuck in the canal. I thought the same guy who was going on the canal. My husband was, he kept taking the boat out of gear. We couldn't move it.
Is that gonna, present the conditions? Are we gonna do any kind of presentation?
We can if we want,
Okay,
if you want them to, for the condition.
yeah. Okay, we are back as the city council. We have no public hearings, but we do have the deliberation of SE 02-17.
And I will just introduce this as a special exception request by Jerry Wexler, agent for Punta Gorda Investors LLC, property owners, for a special exception pursuant to Chapter 26, Section 16.8, Punta Gorda Code, to allow an assisted living facility with a memory care unit to be located in a general multifamily zoning district as is permitted by special exception approval per Chapter 26, Section 3.5 F13, Punta Gorda Code, on property zone general multifamily 15 units per acre and addressed as 2001 Keostar Drive. Now, there was a public hearing that was previously held. The public hearing was closed by the city council after the public hearing, and this portion of this matter is limited to deliberation and a vote by the city council.
Thank you.
Our zoning official might want to get up here and talk about the conditions that go along with the special exception that staff supports and that the applicant offered. Just reiterate to everybody what they are.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting to present anything. You threw that one on me, Howard, sorry.
It happens.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, Lisa Hannon, interim zoning official for the city. The proposed conditions of approval, which staff recommend approving, that have been given to us by the developer. The project will be developed in substantial compliance with the concept plan shown on Exhibit A. Deliveries shall be made via the access drive located on Keostar Boulevard across from Messina Drive. Developers shall be required to notify regular shippers that no deliveries shall be permitted via Socorro Drive or via Aquiesta Boulevard west of Messina Drive. Deliveries via Federal Express, United Parcel Service, United Postal Service, and similar mail and parcel services shall not be subject to this restriction. Food deliveries shall be by box truck only. No food deliveries shall be by tractor trailer. Employees shall be directed to use the parking lot located in the southeast corner of the property. Vehicular access to and from the employee parking lot shall be via the access drive located on Aquiesta Boulevard across from Messina Drive. The architectural style of the building shall be consistent with what was shown, with that shown in Exhibit B. The applicant shall engage with a committee comprised of 1 council member, 1 urban design staff member, and members of the surrounding community to finalize the architectural details of such elevation. The solid waste dumpster shall be located as shown on Exhibit A and shall be screened from view using materials congruous with the materials on the exterior wall of the main building. No medical waste shall be placed in the dumpster. The proposed facility will provide a written emergency plan per state laws and regulations to be submitted and approved by the city's fire chief or his or her designee. The plan will call for evacuation of residents to be accomplished within a period of 2 to 6 hours upon notice by the fire chief as follows. In case of a major storm event, provide for an out-of-area evacuation to be specified to specified sites by combination of facility-owned transportation, reciprocity transportation agreements with other similar facilities, contracted transportation with reputable contractors, and resident and employee vehicles. A 15-foot landscape buffer shall be planted along the northwest and southern property boundaries. The buffer shall contain 6 trees and 20 shrubs per 100 linear feet. Shrubs planted within the 15-foot landscape buffer at the northwest property corner along Aquiesta Boulevard and Socorro Drive between the 2 driveway entrances at the southwest property corner in front of the stormwater detention area and along the entire southern property boundary must be planted 48 inches at installation in double staggered rows and be maintained to form a 60-inch high continuous visual screen within 1 year after time of planting. All trees within the landscape buffer shall be at least 10 to 12 feet in height and 2.5 inches in diameter at breast height at time of installation. All exterior lighting shall be designed to protect against the spillover of light to adjacent properties.
Thank you. Okay, we are starting our deliberations. Who would like to, anybody want to start? I guess I'll start. I think these conditions are very thorough, and they've addressed many of the concerns that the public has had over this special exception process. I feel like they will stick with the property, correct?
Yes.
So if the property is sold and a new developer comes in, if they don't adhere to if this is accepted as part of the special exception, then they have to start all over, or?
Yes, they would have to seek an amendment of the special exception if this is the use that is going to be continued. Many years down the road, if there's going to be a different use, something other than the present use, some of these conditions perhaps would not be applicable.
Okay. So I feel comfortable with the conditions. Gary?
Okay, just to be clear, would these use restrictions, since this is going to be termed an institution, if this were to be repurposed as a alcoholic rehab or drug rehab center, would that be the same, or would this be restricted to assisted living and memory care?
It's restricted.
I can render an answer, but it would be more appropriate coming from our zoning official.
It would be regulated to just the assisted living facility and memory care facility. That is the only use that we are getting approval for. Any different type of use, again, would require them to come in to amend the special exception. It would go through the entire public hearing process again, if it would be deemed appropriate for the zoning district.
The point that I would want to make clear is, does this mean that state law would not take precedent over what restrictions we're proposing?
Correct.
State law in what respect?
If the state law said, we've had some comments from some individuals that state law says that you can take this and repurpose it. This has happened in Miami and so forth. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what can and can't happen here.
Under our zoning code, there are certain uses that are permitted by right and certain uses that are permissible with a special exception. If the use that is proposed other than what is presently before the city council is neither a permitted use nor a use permitted by special exception, they would have to go through the special exception process if in fact it would qualify for a special exception. In this case, for example, the determination was made that this particular use was similar to a nursing facility, nursing home, which is specifically specified in our zoning code for special exceptions. Under our code, if the use is not listed as a permitted use, listed as a special exception, or is, and I'm paraphrasing here, is a use that is deemed by the zoning administrator to be similar to a use that's been listed, then it's prohibited. So if a future proposed use is neither permitted by right, permitted as a special exception, or consistent with, in the mind of the zoning administrator, any of the other specifically identified special exceptions, then it would be prohibited.
And even if it did qualify under another special exception, this use on this application says assisted living facility with a memory care unit. So we're basing all of this on this application.
Correct.
I just want to be clear on that.
And I can further answer Mr. Wine's question. I think it was related to, quote, sober houses, end quote, that are considered different because they're protected under ADA and fair housing and state statutes for community residential homes, also known as group homes. Group homes are actually permitted in a general multifamily district. However, a group home is limited in our code to a certain number of residents, so that wouldn't really apply for a building this large. It wouldn't be economically feasible if they wanted to do it as a group home.
Understood. I just want to be clear. Whatever that number is, it's considerably less than what this building would be.
Correct.
Which would make it economically unfeasible for someone to ask to request that.
Comments, Lynn?
I don't know where to start. First of all, thank you to all the citizens who have attended both last meeting and this meeting and for your input. I've read and received all of them and forwarded them to the city staff to share with the other council members. And while we do appreciate all your comments, our decision has to be based upon 4 criteria that must be met before we can say approval or not approval. And so with that in mind, I do want to say that I was a little disappointed in some of the letters that we received because they were filled with emotion and they were, in some cases, even went as far as veiled threats. And I was very disappointed to see that from citizens in our community. We have a very difficult job to do, and we're trying to do the best thing that we need to do for the city of Punta Gorda. And I can assure you that no one takes this responsibility more seriously than I do. But, you know, the developer has the right to do what they want to do with the piece of property that they bought. And the real reality of this whole situation is that if he cannot get this project approved, he has the right to start building today, and he can build apartments or condos, and he can fill that space with apartments or condos. And keep in mind what you're going to get with apartment renters. You're going to get people who have apartments require 2 parking spaces for every unit. So you're going to have 130 vehicles plus guest parking. You're going to have potentially 3 stories over parking. You may have as many as 5 buildings that fit that criteria. And you're going to have amenities that go with that project, which could include a pool. It could include a community room. It could include all kinds of other things that might also be added to that project. So that is potentially what you're looking at if this project doesn't get approved. Having said all of that, while I think that this is a good use for the piece of property, I'm still very concerned about the size of the building. And I've mentioned this to the developer and to the attorney when we had our one-on-one meetings.
My personal feeling is that it does not meet the criteria due to the size of the building, and it does not fit into the community. So I'm very, very torn about how I'm going to vote on this, and I still haven't made my decision about it. But I wanted to put that information out there because we do respect your opinion about everything that you voiced in your letters, but please keep in mind that we have decisions that have to be made based on the law. And we have to be able to defend our decisions in a court of law if it comes to that. So I hope you all understand that we do take this responsibility very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, probably on that note, is that it's probably something we should look at is that the future is actually having some kind of like an educational session where the public is actually informed about what actually goes into a quasi-judicial hearing, planning commission, because I think oftentimes there's not an understanding there's a difference between a regular meeting where we can vote based on popular consensus. This meeting, we really do have parameters we have to fall within. Now, with this said, we're going to follow that, but my feelings regarded just personally is that growing up here, my grandmother, she was responsible for all the congregate meals in the county for the seniors, and I grew up in a situation where I saw a tremendous energy put into caring for the elders, and going away and coming back, I feel that to some degree we have lost concern for seniors in that to me personally, we're woefully inadequate when it comes to facilities for elders, and I find that the insistence on viewing this as commercial rather than institutional from the standpoint of simply giving more help to someone who wishes to live a residential life around their neighbors, I personally feel that if someone lives here, that they have the right to live as long as they can, the best life they can with their friends and family. They shouldn't have to go somewhere else if they have a health challenge or their spouse dies. And I've spoken to both the applicant as well as many residents in the surrounding area, and every single resident who I've talked to who is surrounding this area, who is 80 years old or above, has asked me, literally, please have the courage to support this, because when we're not closer to that age, we may have less empathy for elders, but when you're closer to the age, understanding that one little event could make it so your life is much harder. And I personally feel that we owe it to our seniors, that we provide them the best quality of life possible, and I don't think they should be penalized for getting older, losing a spouse, or having a health challenge. So I am in support of this.
Any other comments?
Yes. I would also like to reiterate, as you have, Lynn, that what makes this community special is the active community that we have and the participation of our community in the process. So I value that. I was a bit disturbed by some of the communication as well and some of the assertions. But I tried to listen to every single one, every word. What do people really want? And I pondered this, and I have pondered this for weeks now. And what I heard was that they want something that at least dominates the neighborhood. They don't want something that's towering over their homes. They want to ensure that their aesthetics are preserved. They want to provide for the most relaxing atmosphere. They want to provide for the quietest neighborhood, the least amount of additional cars to existing traffic, and the least impact on Socorro. And I came to the conclusion, actually, what they want is nothing. And that is preference. And I had that expressed by some residents who live right there, that really we just wish that the city would buy this and turn it into a park. And that's not what's going to happen. You know, we've already had the developer state, if publicly, if this is not approved, if it's denied, that they're going to build apartments. So I did some study on this. And I looked at the Oaks on Henry. The Oaks on Henry is an identical size piece of property within a smidgen. It's 52 apartments, built 2 stories. And there is no stormwater detention because of the way they've handled the stormwater there. So it's a different type of property. They have 96 parking spaces on the property instead of 130. So for the property at Akia Star in Socorro to accommodate 65 apartments, I started doing the math and extrapolating where are you going to put 130 parking spaces it's going to have to be 3 stories over parking. Now, 3 stories over parking effectively makes it a 4-story building. 4 stories all the way. So no matter if you live on Akiasta or you live on Socorro, you are going to be facing a 4-story building. That's the reality. And so that's what could happen. And so I'm very torn about this because like you, Lynn, have vacillated. Even walking in here this morning, not knowing exactly which way I would go.
Yep, I agree.
But it's, as I look at this and I examine what is being offered and the fact that an assisted living facility, most of these residents are not going to drive. And like you said, if it's an apartment complex, there will be 1 to 2 cars per apartment, 1 to 2 people per apartment, and families. That'll be coming and going a lot. So it's what dynamic do you want to see at play? And I don't think that that's been fully considered by the residents who live in the neighborhood.
I agree.
You said that very well. I think they would prefer to have a vacant piece of land there. One thing that I did hear at our public hearing is that there is a need for this type of facility. There is a need. Nobody really disputed that. And I do feel like they've made the effort just from the Planning Commission to the City Council meeting, and there were even people upset about that. There were people upset that the plan had changed. The plan was changed based on the input that was given, and that's the process, and that's what we want to happen. So as far as the building size could adversely affect the neighborhood property, I think you're just looking at this, the overall, just without the, like what she was saying, without the height. I mean, if this was a continuous 3-story something, I would definitely think that it could be too large of a building. But the way it is staggered and it's being built to fit the actual use that they need, I think, and the landscaping, they've improved the landscaping, they've put it down on paper. It will happen. It will be, a little bit more than what's even required. And they plan to plant mature trees, so like you're saying, if an apartment complex goes up, more than likely it's going to be the bare minimum. More than likely it would be just the bare minimum. So, Jaha, then we'll go back this way.
Just what I was going to basically say that in considering this, I mean, the impact on the neighborhood is utmost. And so I have 2 things in my mind. One is that we are the 2nd oldest population and that we don't have a Class A facility, which really makes no sense to me. I mean, when Venice, Port Charlotte, Ocala, everywhere else has one. I just find that we do need to have a place where you don't have to be in a very adverse health condition to be able to go there. Have a place where you give them a little bit more help and still live a full life. With that said, considering what residents are saying about impacts, this is the lowest impact use of this space. And I think, there's opposition to it, but if residents really want to have the least amount of cars, least amount of traffic, least amount of all impacts, there is no lesser impact in terms of a development than this right here.
Gary?
Okay. I have some very close friends that are affected by whatever decision we make today, and some of them are in the audience today. I just want to add a little bit of a personal perspective from me. Some of the letters have indicated that that the local facilities that we do have are not full. That's sort of true and sort of not true, depending on how you ask the question, whether season and so forth. I have a very dear friend who's 101 years old, who's very blessed and fortunate to still live independently. Her children are in New Jersey and New York. They alternate every other week to come see their mother, and their mother is also blessed with having a lot of concerned friends and neighbors that also watch over Marion, and she's able to live that way. That is not the norm. I'm an only child, and I've had to use these type of facilities in the care for both of my parents, and I was fortunate in Richmond, Virginia, in this case, to be able to put them in places where I could enjoy them on a very personal basis every day that I was in town, and didn't have to worry as I went beyond my career. With that said, I'm born in 1947. the second year of the baby boomers. The average age in these facilities right now is about 85 years of age. That means someday, when I turn 80, which is about when my parents needed this type of facility, I may need this type of facility too. It is going to be a growing market because that's the generation that we're seeing in these facilities right now is the generation that was sometimes referred to as the greatest generation. They're the parents of the baby boomers of the generation of several of us, but not all of us up here at the podium. And we have to take that into consideration also. And differently is that kids live all over the country now. My kids are dispersed all over the country. Linda and I love this community, and we're going to want to stay here. I'm very confident of it. And if that day comes, it would be, from my perspective personally, a blessing to be able to have a facility such as this, whether it's here or if it's in Birch Door Isles, but in the general area, because we've made so many good friends, long-term friends here. We've been here since 2000, probably going to be here another 15 years, hopefully, if we're lucky, and would like to fill our days out here in a productive, active way as our bodies permit us. So I do agree, though, that I would have preferred to see the footprint of the building a little bit smaller. But as far as it being a 3-story, it's really a 3-2-1. It's not 3 stories all the way 3. So it doesn't have the same impact as if it was going to be built into a condo. I'm kind of leaning towards, more leaning towards approving this facility for those reasons, but I am empathetic to the other discussions that we've had.
I guess a question that I had is what kind of trees would be proposed in a landscape buffer? Because there are small canopy trees that are only about 15 feet. You know, we see some of those along the multi-use recreational trails, and then we have trees that are maybe a 25-foot canopy, and so, I mean, what kind of buffer so that
Staff has not received the actual landscape plan. That will be reviewed at time of development review, the DRC application. They are required then to submit a landscape plan. We can look at the species at the time, but as long as they meet the minimum requirements of tree height and number of native species, then we can't, us as staff cannot regulate which trees that they put in as long as they meet but we can recommend.
well, I would think that we could make that a part of this. It is a special exception.
Allow the
And I would
committee.
think we could make it
You can, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would think that we could make it that we wouldn't want trees with a minimum canopy. We would want trees that are,
Buffer.
A real buffer.
a buffer, a larger variety that would actually create a buffer.
So number 10 says all trees within the landscape buffer shall be at least 10 to 12 feet in height and 2.5 inches in diameter at breast height at the time of installation. You'd like to add?
Well, that doesn't mean that's what the tree will be at maturity.
Right.
A nice caliper of trunk at planting is great, because that's going to show that you're putting in a little bit more mature tree. It'll take a little longer to get established, but it's going to be okay. Well, what will it be at maturity?
Well, for the record, Joan LeBeau, Urban Design, we will go ahead and work with the staff and make those recommendations, provided there's no overhead wires and underground utilities as we go through the DRC process.
Do we
And we'll
not
make
have,
large canopy trees as part of that requirement.
Okay.
in our landscape code, when we require a certain buffer, isn't there like an opacity requirement? With just height, not opacity?
No, but again, the shrubs that we have been thinking they were proposing, and we will make that recommendation, we will require that at the time of DRC, will be something that will be very solid tree, like a cocoa plum, that will grow fast and have a good thick a width.
Thank you.
If, well, I was gonna,
He
if,
wants to say something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say something, but I'll follow up on this discussion.
Okay.
If the city council does have the opportunity at this moment to include conditions as part of the special exception, is there an opacity, generally accepted opacity standard for buffers?
There's nothing actually called out, sorry, for the record, Lisa Hannon, interim zoning official. There's nothing exactly called out for opacity in the code, just the width of the landscape buffer area.
Can you make a recommendation? I mean, I've seen like 80% opacity for buffers. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a buffer, is to screen the neighboring properties.
The developer's willing to work with us and make that part of the architectural elevations as when they work with the committee and the community on the committee as part of the architectural style of the building. They're willing to add the landscape plan in there so it could be approved prior to them coming for development review.
But the city council does have the ability to recommend in that, not recommend, but also require as part of that review certain minimum standards. So can you suggest, even if we don't have it in the code, what a recommended opacity standard would be for the buffer that you're considering here?
We can recommend the 80%. That staff would be comfortable with that if you wanted us to, so we can do that. We have no standards for the.
No, I understand, but you're I'm asking you to provide some guidance to the city council if they were willing to go or wanting to go in that direction.
Between the required trees that will be there, you have to give them enough room to grow, so we can have that 80% for the shrubs, and then the trees would be in between that, and as they grow, they will provide the 100% because they'll have that staggered row. Once the shrubs get to that height, they'll have that staggered row.
So are you comfortable with, as a reasonable standard for the consideration by the city council, that between the shrubs and the trees, that a 80% opacity buffer standard should be required and maintained?
Yes.
Nancy?
So then, should we also specify a large canopy tree, or is that?
Yes, we can require that as well.
Okay.
Again, I don't know what is above where the buffer will be required, and it will depend on what is above and what is below the ground.
So on number 5, with the committee, the architectural style of the building shall be consistent with that shown in Exhibit B. The applicant shall engage with a committee comprised of 1 council member, 1 urban design staff member, and members of the surrounding community to finalize the architectural details of such elevation. Can we add in there the landscape plan as well?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think paragraph 8 is probably where you might want to insert an opacity standard.
Yes, because, number 8 addresses the 15-foot landscape buffer shall be planted along the northwest and southern property boundaries. The buffer shall contain 6 trees, 20 shrubs per 100 linear feet.
So as to maintain 80% opacity.
Do you feel comfortable with that, Nancy, adding the landscape, the language in number 5, including the landscape design?
In number 5?
Yes. To finalize the architectural details of such elevation and the landscape plan?
Yes, yes.
I think the applicant wants to clarify something.
I just wanted to point out, if you look at
State your
condition,
name, please.
Jerry Waxler for the record. If you look at condition number 9, that was read into the record, that was the intent to form a 60-inch, it's on the second page, to form a 60-inch high continuous visual screen within 1 year after time of planting. You can replace the word continuous with opaque. The intention there was that at the 2 corners and along the entirety of the southern boundary, that you would have a complete opaque screen. In between that area, if you want to have 80% opacity, I'm okay with that, but the thought was that you don't want to wall in this facility. You do want it to feel like it is part of the community. But it was important at the 2 corners where you had parking and stormwater that you have the opacity. And again, would have no objection on 9 to, instead of saying 60-inch high continuous, to say 60-inch high opaque, because that was the intention with the word continuous.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with that. What I was talking about was the type of tree and at maturity.
And we have no problem with a wide canopy tree. Like I said, we had recommended that you add into that language, as Mayor Kiesling indicated, that can be part of the type of tree, the size of the tree can be part of what is discussed with the community when we do the exterior elevations. We can also discuss specifics of the landscape plan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other comments?
I guess Would it be possible to ask why, Lynn mentioned condos, why not condos as an option? Would we be allowed to ask that question?
I did ask that question when I met with the developer, and the response was that he ran the numbers to build condos, and because it is not waterfront property, it would be very difficult to build condos that were at the same caliber as single-family homes in the community because they didn't allow water access for boaters.
Okay.
That was the reason why. And the cost would be a lot more expensive than even building this facility.
You have comments?
Yes, since we have a lot of new people that are involving themselves in this process for the first time, both at the public hearing at the last city council meeting here today and those that are watching, I thought I wanted to give, it might be helpful to give a little bit of the ground rules involved in special exception matters such as this. First thing I want to note is that there are specific criteria in our code which have to be met in order to qualify for a special exception. And I'm just going to read the criteria that are applicable here, and also note that the City Council's decision and their vote to determine whether or not this project satisfies the criteria can be based solely upon the evidence and testimony presented at the public hearing. While the public does have a right to send comments to their elected officials, the elected officials have an obligation to make their decision based solely on the facts, the testimony, the opinions, et cetera, that were presented during the public hearing. So the first criteria, proposed use will not adversely affect the use of neighboring properties. Criteria number 2, the use shall comply with applicable district regulations and applicable provisions of the adopted comprehensive plan and downtown plans. Criteria number 3, the location, size, and height of buildings, structures, walls, and fences, and the nature and extent of screening, buffering, and landscaping shall be such that the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent or nearby land and or buildings. Criteria 4, the proposed use will be such that pedestrian and vehicular traffic generated will not be hazardous or conflict with the existing and anticipated traffic in the neighborhood and on the streets serving the site. And I would ask the City Council that if you propose to deny the special exception, to identify which criteria and the basis of your opinion that the criteria has been met for the record.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll just make one more.
Okay.
Again, I want to stipulate, I find it very, very beneficial that the developer has so far agreed to many of the changes that originally were proposed in the plan. And I think they've been more than willing to try to fit into the community as best as they can. I think they're still willing to do further tweaking of the plan before it's all said and done. And that's why I requested, when I met with them, that we form a committee with some of the citizens locally and one of the council members to try to sit down and hash out the actual logistics of the building and the design of the building, because that hasn't even been firmed up yet. So I'm very happy that they were agreeable to a lot of those terms. They've agreed to put the service entrance on the back side of the building, as well as employee parking. They've agreed to put the buffering landscape. They've agreed to put sidewalks. Those were not included in the original site plan, and those were all things that we requested when we met with them. So they have been amenable to making changes to the site plan, and I commend them for being that flexible and wanting for this facility to be a Class Act facility in our community. I do think that this is a good use of the piece of property, and I do not believe that it's going to hinder the lifestyle of anybody that lives in and around it. I live very close to there, and this happens to be in my district, so it's very near and dear to my heart. I would like to continue discussion with regard to the actual logistics and site plan before it goes to mortar and brick, as it were. So, I'm still very torn with the size of the building. That's my one hang-up. That's my one real hang-up, and that is one of the criteria. So I keep going, but I'm vacillating a lot, and I was up all night thinking about this. And it's a very difficult decision for us to have to make. And we're making it on behalf of a lot of people in our community, and we realize that. So please respect whatever we do decide, because it's not anything against anyone in the community if it goes in one direction or the other. But I really appreciate everybody offering your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to say I live in the close vicinity of the Life Care Center and the Palms on Shreve Street. I mean, those are my routes to pretty much everywhere. And I have to tell you, I've never really stuck in traffic on Shreve. I've never been stuck behind a Cheney Brothers truck or anything of that nature. I see the food trucks go in and out of there, but it's never created any kind of hazard for me. And, you know, that area by the Palms especially is very well populated. So I really don't think, you know, the conditions have helped the thought of what was going to happen there. So I feel comfortable with that. Yes?
I would have to agree with Lynn that the one thing that has kind of stuck in my mind is what would these buildings look like if I lived across the street? And believe me, I have people that I know, consider friends, that live across the street. And it's like, how would I feel? And I've really pondered this a lot, thinking, okay, if it's an apartment and it's 3 stories over parking, that's going to be really imposing. And they're going to be all over the place. And 3 stories is different than what we see today. We see nothing today. So, and I realize what perhaps they would want to see, but it's not going to be that. So I looked at what is reality.